On the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there is having themselves a great day. Huge breaking news. A giant press conference came out with Trump's main lawyers laying out what's going on, what's happened so far, and what's to come. I've got a link of the entire thing below. It's an hour and a half long. I went through and snipped it up. I got about 13 and a half, 14 minutes of solid video, and I want to get right into it. This is huge. This to me is huge. This is what I have been waiting for. This is what makes me proud to be an American, to see us work through this challenge. And on top of that, this is exactly why we love Donald Trump and why we were stoked to have him in place, and why we were also equally very ecstatic to see these legal macho people handling this case for Trump. So the first part of the video I want to start, and I've just kind of got it all tied together here in one video. The very first part of the video I've got for you is the states that are going to turn. I want to point this out. He just kind of goes over, he kind of leans off camera and sort of talks about, but there's like 6 or 7 states that he calls out. We've been talking about 3, and Trump's path to victory really only required about 3. But what we're going to find out, and what's also talked about, is there's way the heck more than 3 that are probably going to be turned. I say probably, most likely, because there is so much evidence. And that's another thing that gets called out a bunch in this, is how the news and how the mainstream media is complicit in this. They continue to say there's no evidence. Yes, there is. First off, affidavits are evidence. They are legally signed documents that state what happened in the viewer or the witness's standpoint. It is a legal document. It is evidence, and in some cases can be proof if there's no way to say otherwise. So again, let's talk about the few states that are looking to change when all of this legal stuff is said and done. Let's check it out.
In the states that we have indicated in red, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona, we more than double the number of votes needed to overturn the election in terms of provable illegal ballots.
Doubling in those states. Now, I want to say just right off the bat, poor Giuliani, it obviously was warm in that room, and he's a big guy to begin with, so he was sweating like a rock star. And on top of that, he obviously uses something gross in his hair because he kept getting these drippies of black. And one of them actually even got into his collar at one point. So, again, the poor guy was sweating his butt off. And there's a picture of him, Jenna, and Flynn that was posted like 1:15 a.m. this morning. Today's the 19th. So we've got all sorts of stuff that's going to be coming out tomorrow. But those states are the states that we're looking at turning. Now, the other part that really stood out with Giuliani talked about Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, like he got into Atlanta, he got into all the different states. If you want to see all that information, totally check out the hour and a half. He really gets into some detail and some of the different eyewitnesses, talks about some of the affidavits, gets into a whole slew of stuff. But really what I wanted to kind of share with you at this next spot is Giuliani's close, because he does a really good job kind of summarizing everything and really kind of nailing down what we're expecting to happen. So let's check that out.
Isn't the logical conclusion that I think any jury would accept after they heard this evidence that somebody had this plan? Maybe that was always the plan, to do this very, very questionable form of voting, which has been criticized by President Carter, by Secretary Baker, by most experts on election reform. I think the logical conclusion is this is a common plan, a common scheme. It comes right directly from the Democrat Party, and it comes from the candidate. Clearly. That's the reason why Hillary Clinton said, don't concede, even if you're losing. That's the reason we had a Freudian slip by the candidate. And he said he had the best voter fraud team in the country. That's the reason why he probably didn't have to go out and campaign. He had to have known what they were going to do. This had to be planned in advance. I'm kind of checking, did they go, to the same contractor to get the corrals to put the Republicans in? And this is a disgraceful thing that was done in this country. Probably not much more disgraceful than the things these people did in office, which you didn't and don't bother to cover, and you conceal from the American people. But we let this happen. We use largely a Venezuelan voting machine, in essence, to count our vote. We let this happen, we're going to become Venezuela. We cannot let this happen to us. We cannot allow these crooks, because that's what they are, to steal an election from the American people. They elected Donald Trump. They didn't elect Joe Biden. Joe Biden is in the lead because of the fraudulent ballots, the illegal ballots that were produced and that were allowed to be used after the election was over. Give us an opportunity to prove it in court, and we will.
Again, hugely powerful in how he's calling out the press, how he's saying what they're planning on doing, and how he also calls out a few of the things that were really strange about Biden. The one he left out, too, was the Biden, I've shared it, I think, on the last video or the video before, but where Biden basically says, I don't need help getting elected, I need help once I'm in. And he knew that there was some stuff going on, some shenanigans, some change, some messes, something. He was aware of what was going on in the background. There's a lot of information that continues to come out, and one of the best parts is really when Powell comes on, and she's next, Lindsay Powell, and she comes on and talks about basically the history of the Smartmatic and the history of Dominion, and really talks about what they were capable of doing, what the software was designed to do, when and how it was designed, a whole slew of stuff that really paints the picture for how strange it is that we paid hundreds of millions of dollars for software that was created by a communist country, essentially a socialist communist country, or a socialist with a dictator with Venezuela, and how it was been used and was designed to alter elections. Seems strange that we would do that. And then on top of that, the information seems to go into servers in another country. Now, it is funny. One thing that was brought up by Powell, a question at the end, and I didn't get any of the questions in this, but someone asked Powell, hey, supposedly they took a server from Germany. Is that true? And she says, yeah, it's true. We're just not sure if the good guys got it or the bad guys got it. So that's going to be an interesting little tidbit of information to consider. The bad guys may very well have gotten the actual server. I don't think it's going to matter in the big picture, and I still think there's some sort of backup plan. They were well aware where the server was. So I don't think that's the end of that. And besides all of that, there's still ample evidence, and they pointed out further in here, there's still ample evidence that we have this election, that Donald Trump will be elected the president this year, that it will be decided one way or the other, not by the media, as it maybe says below, that AP already decided the election. No, no, no. There's a legal process that's happening, and they really are trying to maintain that the elections are trustworthy and that they continue to stay legal. So let's listen to Powell talk about the history and really kind of open up the floor for what she's here to do.
What we are really dealing with here and uncovering more by the day is the massive influence of communist money through Venezuela, Cuba, and likely China in the interference with our elections here in the United States. The Dominion voting systems, the Smartmatic technology software, and the software that goes in other computerized voting systems here as well, not just Dominion, were created in Venezuela at the direction of Hugo Chavez to make sure he never lost an election after one constitutional referendum came out the way he did not want it to come out. We have one very strong witness who has explained how it all works. His affidavit is attached to the pleadings of Lynn Wood in the lawsuit he filed in Georgia. It is a stunning, detailed affidavit because he was with Hugo Chavez while he was being briefed on how it worked. He was with Hugo Chavez when he saw it operate to make sure the election came out his way. That was the express purpose for creating this software. He has seen it operate, and as soon as he saw the multiple states shut down the voting on the night of the election, he knew the same thing was happening here, that was what had gone on. Now, the software itself was created with so many variables and so many back doors that can be hooked up to the internet or a thumb drive stuck in it or whatever. But one of its most characteristic features is its ability to flip votes. It can set and run an algorithm that probably ran all over the country to take a certain percentage of votes from President Trump and flip them to President Biden. which we might never have uncovered had the votes for President Trump not been so overwhelming in so many of these states that it broke the algorithm that had been plugged into the system. And that's what caused them to have to shut down in the states they shut down in. That's when they came in the back door with all the mail-in ballots, many of which they had actually fabricated. Some were on pristine paper with identically matching perfect circle dots for Mr. Biden. Others were shoved in batches. They're always put in a certain number of batches, and people would rerun the same batch. This corresponds to our statistical evidence that shows incredible spikes in the vote counts at particular times, and that corresponds to eyewitness testimony of numerous people who have come forward and said they saw the ballots come in the back door at that time.
So many things that she keeps talking about that we've been saying, we as the people that have been pro-Trump through this. Now, again, I just kind of want to remind, and I'm not blaming per se, but I think there was a lot of people that really just backed off, just accepted the fact that Biden won, just said, oh, well, it's not worth the struggle, it's not worth the argument, it's not worth the fight. These three people, thank God, don't agree with that. And then there is a number of us that just didn't believe this, didn't believe what the deep state media was telling us, and certainly kept saying, we're going to see what happens, and then continued to follow up with all the different legal stuff that was going down. She is calling out all sorts of information, factual information, affidavit-backed information, so much information that the deep state's toast. And if this goes before a court, they've got ample evidence that they could present to the Supreme Court or whoever this is going to go before to basically say, all right, it's up to you guys to decide how we move forward, because obviously this election was hosed from the get-go. And it is very interesting how that is all played out. Now, the next thing that Sydney gets into that's fascinating is she talks about a criminal investigation. I think this is really important. I've talked about how I did a video recently, how behind every good Trump is an AG bar. This is one of those places where I think that ball is either A, already rolling, or B, will majorly be getting going. But let's see what Sydney has to say about all that.
Many of the jurisdictions that have had this problem might not have known of the issues, but many did. And I think a full-scale criminal investigation needs to be undertaken immediately by the Department of Justice and by every state's equivalent, Attorney General's office or state investigatory unit, because there's evidence of different benefits being provided to the people who spent $100 million of taxpayer money at the last minute for their state to get the Dominion voting systems put in time for this election in different ways. There's one person that a lawyer told me got, quote, election insurance, meaning that he would be able to make sure he was elected. I'm sure they explained that feature in detail to many people who expressed interest in putting this voting system in.
Now, one thing that kind of gets me a little bit, I've said this before, and it just keeps popping up. One, there's a picture, I don't know if you guys have seen it, of Kamala Harris fist-bumping Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham's one of the ones that I've never quite trusted, and he started crying big time when they started pushing against him. Now, I'm going to say, would I rather Lindsey Graham be in office than the Democrat counterpart? Sure, absolutely, without a doubt. Will Lindsey Graham support pretty much everything that the Republicans are about? Yes. Is Lindsey Graham possibly that guy? This is speculation, totally speculation. But I'm wondering if he's the guy that was looking for guarantees that he would win. Lindsey Graham strikes me as deep state, no question about it. Again, speculation, totally, but it did make me wonder, and it keeps popping into my head every time she talks about that section. So, we'll see how things play out, but Lindsey Graham is still the one Republican that's truly on my hit list, and I don't trust him, and especially seeing him fist bump Kamala Harris. I'm sorry, I get you guys work fine behind closed doors, and then when it's in public, we're fist fighting and all that. It's a bunch of crap. So, again, it's where I'm at with it. Now, finally, we get into Powell's close, which I think is extremely powerful as well, and it's definitely worth the listen to. Let's check it out.
This is stunning, heartbreaking, infuriating, and the most unpatriotic acts I can even imagine for people in this country to have participated in any way, shape, or form. And I want the American public to know right now that we will not be intimidated. American patriots are fed up with the corruption from the local level to the highest level of our government, and we are going to take this country back. We are not going to be intimidated. We are not going to back down. We are going to clean this mess up now. President Trump won by a landslide. We are going to prove it, and we are going to reclaim the United States of America for the people who vote for freedom.
And again, a super powerful part there where she totally talks about how she's essentially got proof, and they're going to be able to prove this case, and that Donald Trump is going to be announced as our president sometime in the near future. When I was watching this live, I'm sitting there, my hands are a little sore because there was a couple points, and this was one of them, where I just freaking started clapping. Like, this was like, oh, finally. Been waiting weeks for this. This has been driving me and probably many of you insane because I knew this was crap. And it's like, if we can't fix this now, we're done. We're screwed. There's no way we ever get our country back. This is the election that matters. There's no, well, in 4 years, we'll see. No, there won't be 4 years. They'll use this Dominion software everywhere. There's no chance that a Republican ever gets back into office, or at least a Republican that's pro-Constitution, pro-us, the American people, we the people. There's no way that happens. And it's very obvious that the Democrats want to win at all costs, or the deep state Democrats is the better way to say it, because there are definitely lots of good people that are Democrats. Problem is, there's a deep state that's evil, that's in control of that party, and they want to win at all costs. And that's not acceptable. Now, this here is Jenna Ellis, and she's going to kind of lay out what's going on in the big picture and talking about how this is basically the opening statement. And it's very fascinating. And she really, again, does a nice little smack on the hand of the press, because the press has done a very bad job in doing this and managing this. And they are so caught right now. Here's the evidence. Here's the proof. How many networks peeled away from this when it was going on? I mean, it was an hour long. There was no way CNN stuck through that. There was no way that ABC, NBC, Fox, none of those people stuck through it. Where did I watch it? I was watching it on Newsmax. They went all the way through, even to the questions. So the mainstream media doesn't want you to see this. Doesn't mean it's not there. Doesn't mean there's not evidence, even though they say there's not. There is. And them saying, and she calls it out, them saying there's not evidence is an outright lie. Period. There is evidence, and so every time the media says there's not evidence, they literally are lying. Period. End of story. So let's see what Jenna has to say. She really nails this good.
Jenna Ellis, and I'm the senior legal advisor to the Trump campaign, and I'd like to just explain now where we've been and where we're at and what you can expect from this process. So what you have heard, I'm sure, in the fake newspapers tomorrow will be one of two things. Either there was not sufficient evidence that we've presented, or we spoke too long. Okay, so what you've heard now is basically an opening statement. This is what you can expect to see when we get to court to actually have a full trial on the merits, to actually show this evidence in court and prove our case. This is not a Law and Order episode where everything is neatly wrapped up in 60 minutes. For those of you who are here in this room or have maybe tuned out in other networks, clearly you've never been court reporters. Trials take time. Putting on evidence takes time. This is basically an opening statement so the American people can understand what the networks have been hiding and what they refuse to cover, because all of your fake news headlines are dancing around the merits of this case and are trying to delegitimize what we are doing here. Let me be very clear that our objective is to make sure to preserve and protect election integrity. President Trump has been saying from day one that this is about maintaining free and fair elections in this country. It is not about overturning an outcome. It is about making sure that election integrity is preserved, and every American should want that. If every American is not on board with that, you have to ask yourself why. And if your fake news network is not covering this or allowing you to cover it fairly and accurately, you should ask yourself why. This is absolutely a legitimate legal basis. We have been asked to provide an entire case that generally would take years in civil litigation. I've been a prosecutor. I have tried cases with far simpler facts. One thing happened in a matter of minutes, and it still takes days. And we go through a jury process. This is the court of public opinion right now. We are not trying our case in the court of public opinion, because if we were, we would get unbiased jurors. I would strike 99% of you from the jury, and I would be allowed to because of the fake news coverage you provide. You are not unbiased jurors. And until you step out of your role as a journalist and actually go into a courtroom and you are a judge on a bench that has sworn an oath to be unbiased in our separation of powers, then your opinion does not matter. The facts matter, the truth matters, and if you are fair reporters, you will cover that fairly and appropriately, and you will allow coverage of our media team here and our legal team. That is absolutely shocking that all you cover are around the margins, and I've seen all of you taking pictures right now, and I can anticipate what your headlines are going to be. If you are not willing to talk about the evidence that has been presented, then that is absolutely unacceptable for journalistic standards. This is an opening statement. This is something where we have told you what the evidence will show, and we have given you a brief description. That happens in a courtroom all the time, where that's not the fact-finding process. That is just an overview. That is what we have given you today because the American people deserve to know what we have uncovered in the last couple of weeks. Remember, this is such a short time frame. And this is an elite strike force team that is working on behalf of the president and the campaign to make sure that our Constitution is protected. We are a nation of rules, not a nation of rulers. There is not someone that just gets to pick who the next president is outside the will of the American people. And that is our task, because when we talk about voter fraud, it's actually election official fraud. That cannot stand. The Constitution requires that the state legislatures are the ones that make election law. It still has to go by the U.S. Constitution. But what has happened in this case is that state and local level officials, and all the way up, have changed the rules. That's what the Democrats do. If they don't like the rules, they change them. And they change them at the last minute. They manipulate them. They want to tear down our American system. Our founders were so brilliant that they anticipated this, that there would be corruption, there would be foreign influence, there would be attempts to manipulate the outcome of the election, especially with who they called our chief magistrate. I would encourage all of you to go home and actually read Alexander Hamilton's Federalist 68 and see what he described as an advocacy position to adopt and ratify the Electoral College and the process by which we select our president. We select our president through the Electoral College not because it disenfranchises voters, but because it is a security mechanism for exactly the type of corruption that we are uncovering. And every American should be grateful and thankful that our founders had the foresight to put in those protections and provisions to make sure that your legitimate legal vote is not disenfranchised. That is what we are advocating for. We want to make sure to protect election integrity, and your president, President Trump, we are so proud that he is in this fight because he understands that when he swore his oath of office, he swore an oath to uphold and defend the United States Constitution. That is what he is doing. And that is what we are doing. We are confident that through this multiple pathway to victory, we will get to the actual outcome that the evidence shows.
President Donald Trump swore his oath to protect this country from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And there's been a lot of domestic enemies that have come forth. I will be extremely surprised. I'll actually be outraged if people aren't arrested. And I'm talking high-level officials. As she's calling out, this is an issue about voter fraud. It's not the voters that messed up. It's the voter election officials that caused fraud. It is not the voters themselves, and it wasn't the process the way it was supposed to be laid out. It was the altered process that was altered at the last minute. These alterations left a telltale sign. There's proof, and they've been able to dive into a lot of this. There's no question that shenanigans happened. Now, will this be decided in court? Yes. I don't know all the information and facts, nor do you. They didn't give it all to us. This would have been like an 18-hour-long thing, right? But it's not. So they're telling us opening statements. Hey, this is what's coming. This is what you can expect. This is what we're saying we can prove. Let's have our day in court, which they legally will definitely get. And one thing that's a little interesting is any state that knowingly certifies their results, knowing all of this information, knowing that all of this is coming forward, whoever signs on that certification of those votes, they are definitely going to be in trouble. And it's going to be fun to see how that plays out as well. Let's hear Jenna's closing remarks. She's got an awesome little bit of close here for us.
Defend that. And as my colleagues have said, we will not back down. We won't be intimidated. President Trump will not be intimidated. You, the American people, should not be intimidated. You, the press, should cover this fairly and should know that this matters to election integrity and it matters to the future of our nation. So we have given you an overview, but recognize this is not a court of law. We will get there, and we have time, and we have constitutional provisions that will step in when we show the corruption and the irredeemably challenged and overturned votes that are absolutely corrupt in all of these counties. It is irredeemably compromised. We will show that, but you have to give us that opportunity. This has been just our opening statement, and we have an opportunity to get there, and we have time, and we will do that. This is the United States of America, and we stand proudly for President Donald J. Trump. Thank you.
Amen to that. Amen to that, right? Like that is, we do stand proudly with Donald J. Trump. And as it stands, looks like Donald Trump's got a very strong chance, especially if some of these algorithms are actually true to form, especially if some of these vertical marks that we saw, where they literally probably just fed in a whole bunch of ballots, at least that's what it looks like from a data standpoint. If they can demonstrate all that and get that worked out, Donald Trump probably won majorly by popular vote. And then on top of that, probably majorly won from an electoral college standpoint as well. Now, will we ever see that truth? I don't know, because so many of these votes are already hammered and messed up as it is. Giuliani in the question and answer part, and I didn't cover it, but he kind of goes in to show what the outer envelope's like and what the inner envelope's like and how they basically threw away the outer envelope. So in a lot of cases, there's really no way to verify the signature because it's already been thrown in the trash. So we've got all sorts of issues, and the deep state Democrats basically said, hey, you should just accept it. Too bad you can't prove otherwise. And it's like, no, actually, we've got all sorts of evidence and other things that prove shenanigans happened. And we've also seen and talked to, we've got sworn affidavits from people that were working with Smartmatic, people that worked with Dominion, people that were even involved in the actual election process and were watching votes happen live. I believe it was Georgia where that was happening, or Detroit. It might have been Detroit. Either way, and she very well might mention. I've got one final little bit, last words from Powell, and we'll see what she has to say. It's pretty cool.
That's why you see massive spikes after hours when people were told that all the votes were in and all the votes were counted. Many Dominion employees have already reached out to us to tell us the truth. They are Americans who want to ensure election integrity like we do. I would encourage every Dominion or Smartmatic employee who is fed up with the corruption in this country to come forward as soon as possible, because these are serious federal offenses that I am confident the Department of Justice will be in pursuit of in very short order if they are not already.
So true. And that is the thing to take away from this, folks. This is the boom, boom, boom that we have been waiting for. Donald Trump knew this was coming. Donald Trump prepared for this. Donald Trump got the best legal team put together to work through this. Even with as small a team as he's got, they've been able to pull together an astounding amount of information. Folks, by no means is this even close to being over. It's getting closer to being over for Biden, but it's not even remotely close to being over for Trump. More information is going to be coming. To my understanding, tomorrow, Friday, there's going to be some sort of announcement, something big likely going to happen regarding this case. So we'll be looking forward to that, and certainly I'll talk about that tomorrow as soon as I do a video. But again, I had to get this out. It took me a while to snip this all together, but I had to get this out. This is amazing. My hands hurt from clapping. This is what I've been waiting for. I'm hoping I've somehow been able to help get your excitement level up about this as well. This is a great country, and we're a part of something historically that will be amazing. Our United States and this planet will never be the same after this year, ever. This is the year that the good, that the positive, that God, that Jesus, that whatever, that we finally grabbed the reins, that we grabbed the wheel, and we took control of this boat, this ship called planet Earth, but certainly this ship called the United States of America, where we, the people, are finally again in charge of this country. Where we go one, we go all. It's on the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle.